Was the NFC North all smoke and mirrors? I would love for you guys to leave your comments and let me know if you think this was the most overrated division in all of football. Of course, this division posted some historical numbers when you start talking about wins by a division. When you're looking at Detroit, you're looking at Minnesota and Green Bay. All of them had a combined 40 wins and only 11 losses. Looked like the best division in all of football until they get to the postseason where they went 0-3, and it started with the Rams just trouncing the Minnesota Vikings. And the Minnesota Vikings get all of the answers to the questions they had about Sam Darnold, and is like, is this dude this good? And he looked so good throughout the regular season until near the end of the regular season. He started looking like some doubters started coming and saying, man, is this Sam Darnold that is going to, we've never seen him in the postseason. Is this guy legitimately this good, or are we going to have to find a new quarterback this upcoming season? But they've already got it there in J.J. McCarthy, but do they look elsewhere and let McCarthy learn one more year sitting on the bench? Okay, so then you got the Green Bay Packers going to Philadelphia. A tough environment to play. Philadelphia gives them every opportunity to go in and win that game. Of course, the Packers just didn't look good down the stretch at the end of the season, suffering a couple injuries like Christian Watson to this Packer offense, and they just looked stale on offense. It wasn't because of Josh Jacobs. They looked stale. Jordan Love not playing his best football down the stretch, and it doesn't help when you've got wide receivers that just can't catch the ball. And then you've got the Detroit Lions. Okay, so the Lions had a first round bye because they were that good during the regular season, and then they play the Commanders at home and they just get absolutely embarrassed. Of course, they had their injuries they had to deal with throughout the season, but they looked terrible. Jared Goff threw 3 interceptions in that contest. He had a fumble, and then Jameson Williams had an interception as well. I was on cloud 9 last night. I was laughing. It was great for me to see, as somebody that hates the Detroit Lions. They looked terrible. Okay, so looking ahead to 2025 in the Packers wide receiving cast there. Okay, so Christian Watson, who's going to be his replacement? He's going to miss 3/4 of the season in 2025. And when you look at the wide receiving room in Green Bay, which looked so talented and could be so talented, but they dropped so many passes. In fact, Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed dropped 9 passes each, a combined 18 drop passes. Romeo Doubs had 7 drops of his own. Christian Watson only had 1 of them. So that is a target that's going to be missed by Jordan Love, especially when you start talking about reliability of somebody being able to catch the ball. Christian Watson was that guy for Jordan Love. So where do they look? Okay, so you can look to free agency or the draft. Okay, so Brian Gutekunst has already alluded to, hey, we really want to get somebody in here, knowing that Christian Watson is going to be gone for 3/4 of the season. So I'm going to throw some names out there for you that are just bigger name free agent players that could potentially come to Green Bay. Okay, so you start with Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin, of course, has his own injuries of his own. His season was cut short because of an ankle injury. I don't see a world where Godwin coming to Green Bay is going to be helpful for them, because he's just as injury prone as Christian Watson. So I don't see that being a good option for the Packers. And then you've got Stephon Diggs, of course, who's a diva type wide receiver. He's coming off of a torn ACL himself. He's getting up there in age. That certainly doesn't make sense for the Packers to go and get Stephon Diggs. What about an aging DeAndre Hopkins, who's 33 years old, was such a good wide receiver at one point in time? They're going to need to buy some time for Christian Watson to come back. Could a guy like DeAndre Hopkins make sense? Potentially. I don't like it, but potentially. Then you've got Amari Cooper as a free agent. I don't see that happening. Then you've got Hollywood Brown. Okay, so Hollywood Brown had a pretty successful beginning of his career in Baltimore before getting traded for a first-round pick. Since he's been traded, he's only posted 118 catches for nearly 1,300 yards, 7 touchdowns. He only played 2 games this last year because of injury, because he broke his shoulder with the Chiefs. Okay, so I don't see a world where Hollywood Brown coming to Green Bay makes a ton of sense either. It could potentially happen, but I don't see it. Okay, so the name that's been floating out there a lot has been T. Higgins for the last couple of years when we're talking about key additions that could make dramatic impacts on this Packer offense. Of course, T. Higgins has been in the shadow of Jamar Chase his whole career, and he has the potential to be a number one wide receiver for sure anywhere he goes. But he's going to draw a ton of interest. He's 26 years old, so he's a younger wide receiver. He's a number one caliber type wide receiver. He's going to command a ton of money. I don't see a world where Brian Gutekunst just breaks the bank to compete with other teams to get T. Higgins in there. It could potentially happen. I think the most realistic veteran to join the Green Bay Packers, believe it or not, would be Davante Adams and reuniting with the Packers there, because Davante Adams, he still has 2 years left on his contract. There's been a lot of talks that Davante Adams is going to be released by the Jets, and if he does that, is going to be taking somewhat of a pay cut to go and join his former team, the Green Bay Packers. I can easily see a world where Davante Adams comes back. He still has gas left in the tank. He's 32 years old. I can see him coming back to Green Bay and just everybody's excited. He's kind of a fan favorite there. I can see a world where that happens. I absolutely can. Okay, so if that doesn't happen, but I do think Davante Adams will get cut. I think Aaron Rodgers will get cut, and in fact, I think Aaron Rodgers could follow in the steps of his predecessor Brett Favre, where he started out, where he ended his career once he left Green Bay. He went to the Jets, and then he ended his career in Minnesota. Now that the Minnesota Vikings have their answer in Sam Darnold, JJ McCarthy, they may give him one more year's rest. And because they're getting older, you've got a very good running back there in Aaron Jones. And they might just say, hey, listen, let's bring Aaron Rodgers in here. Let's reunite him with Aaron Jones. He's got one year left. They both probably have 1 year left in the tank. Could they make one last ditch effort at trying to get to a Super Bowl by adding Aaron Rodgers? I can see a world where the Minnesota Vikings could potentially do that. But I think Davante Adams certainly wouldn't follow him there in Minnesota. I could see a world where Davante Adams becomes a Packer yet again. Okay, so if the Packers look to the draft, what type of wide receivers could they be looking at? This is a day 3, day 2 type wide receiver here in Jaden Higgins. He's a huge frame. He's 6'4", 215 pounds, out of Iowa State. If you haven't seen highlights on him, go and look at some highlights on him. All you got to do is throw the ball up to him. He's got great awareness of coming back to the ball, something that Jordan Love really could use. I can see this being a very good draft pick for Brian Gutekunst this upcoming draft. What about, I can't say his name great, so Alec Amanor, I can't say his name, but anyways, watch some highlights on this wide receiver out of Stanford. He's super good. He's got a huge frame, 210 pounds, 6'2", second team all ACC by the coaches. In 2023, his freshman year, he was all Pac-12 honorable mention, all Pac-12 fourth team. He was offensive player of the week, all that type of stuff. He's got a lot of accomplishments in his collegiate career. This is a guy that has great hands. He's got pretty good route running ability. I can see this guy coming in, making an instant impact. But my wish list, number one on my wish list easily would be the wide receiver out of Ohio State, Emeka Egbuka. This is a guy that would be an absolute splash of a draft pick for Brian Gutekunst. This is a guy that you would have to trade up for. However, and would Brian Gutekunst be willing to trade up partially to go and get him, depending on maybe, where he falls in the draft? I could see him going anywhere from like 16 to 20. So if he happens to fall near that 20 range, could the Packers move up slightly and give up a little bit of capital to get a guy like Egbuka? Potentially. This dude is so fast. He's so good. He would certainly make an impact on this Packer offense with Jordan Love. 6'1", 205, great route running ability out there. In fact, check out this highlight here, where you're just seeing, and he's showcasing exactly what he can do. His footwork, his route running, his awareness, his in and out break transitions. This dude is super good. He's going to be a lot of teams are going to be drooling to go and get a wide receiver like this. I would love him to become a Packer. I would love to know your thoughts. Leave your comments. Let me know who's that next Christian Watson replacement. And as always, go Pack Go.